What's up, everybody? It is Jordan here from Hive Mind Hobbies with another Tyranid Tactics video. This video, I'm going to talk to you the steps that I would take if I was starting or building a collection right now from 500 points all the way to 2,000 points for one of the best detachments we have, Subterranean Assault. Coming from somebody who almost predominantly plays 2,000 points, always looking at 500 points list for these types of videos is very fun because I'm just reminded how small the point total is. At 500 points for Subterranean Assault, here's how I would start. I would have my Trigon be a Warlord. We do not actually have enough points to upgrade him as the Trigon Prime, but I still think he is worth it in that Warlord spot. And then my other data sheets, I'm just going to have a Biovore, a Haruspex, a Lictor, and a squad of Raveners. The idea being is my Trigon can pop around the field wherever it wants to, and the Raveners can hopefully pick up the Haruspex and sneak in a 6-inch charge with the Haruspex to take out whatever spookiness you're facing at 500 points. At 1,000 points, I feel like the detachment is really starting to take shape and you're able to do things that, well, you want to be able to do in Subterranean Assault. So the first thing, we've added the Prime enhancement on the Trigon. It's very important. It gives him +1 to hit. Hitting on 2s now with reroll 1s. Super strong on the Trigon Prime. And then essentially getting +2 to its strength because of Synapse, as well as that +1 to strength bonus. Strength 11 is a really good breaking point, and it's going to allow for this Trigon to be a really hard-hitting beat stick. In addition, we're adding some Hormagaunts just for some mission play, maybe some board control. One of the worst things for Subterranean Assault is if your opponent gets to go first and then just jam you in your deployment zone. It's really not what Subterranean Assault wants to look at. So having a screening unit like some Hormagaunts will be very, very useful. And then last three things, we've added a Maleceptor, a Psychophage, and a second set of Raveners. I really think every single Subterranean Assault list has to start with at least 2 Ravener squads. I think the sweet spot is 2 Raveners and a Trigon, and that's going to allow for a whole bunch of uppy-downy or downy-uppy shenanigans and allowing for your more impactful units to get around the board. The Maleceptor is there because he can just pretty much function on his own in shooting and fight phase. I don't think he's the best unit in either of those phases, but he really does make use of the detachment rule of reroll 1s to hit, and then getting sustain and ignore cover on him seems pretty strong. And the Psychophage is intending to go along with the Haruspex. They're kind of buddy-buddy, hanging out together. Psychophage is going to give +1 to AP to whatever the Haruspex wants to eat, and the Haruspex is going to eat that thing. At 1,500 points, things really start cooking. One of my favorite units in Subterranean Assault. In fact, I made a video all about how he's the GOAT. Subterranean Assault. We've added the Swarm Lord. Swarm Lord is very, very good. Hits on 2s all the time, of course, and then re-rolling 1s to hit is very, very strong, and then he's got Twin Link, so basically all of his attacks are going to be hitting all of the time. He gives you a CP every single turn, and it doesn't matter where he is on the board, which is very important for Subterranean Assault, because who knows where he's going to be. In addition, that Vect Aura is very, very strong. If you want to hear me talk in depth about how cool the Swarm Lord is, check out that video. I'll link it at the end of the video. Swarm Lord is the GOAT in Subterranean Assault. Then in addition, we've added Gargoyles. Gargoyles are quite strong, and they're actually pretty good in Subterranean Assault too. If you notice that coming out of a tunnel, you can be just outside of 6 inches of your enemy units. That's pretty good for charges, but it is also very good for gargoyles shooting and scooting. Now, of course, they can't scoot into combat. They'll have to stay outside of that inch, but it's a pretty sure way to just have your gargoyles pop out, shoot something, and then scoot 6 inches, and then tell that thing that it is not allowed to move that turn. In addition, we have added a Tyrannifex. This is just going to help shore up some anti-vehicle stuff that I feel like the list is pretty weak on until we add that Tyrant effects. Tyrant effects, everybody jokes that it is a casino cannon, and it is, but rerolling ones definitely does help the swinginess of that unit. Now, before we go to 2,000 points, let's just do a review of the list as it is. We have the Trigon Prime, we have Swarmlord, and he would need to be the Warlord in this so that he gets that debuff. Then you've got the Hormagaunts, Gargoyles, a Biovore, 1 Haruspex, 1 Lictor, 1 Maleceptor, Psychophage, 2 Raveners, and winding it all up with a Tyrannifex. Let's go to 2,000 points. And here we are at 2,000 points, only adding 3 units, but they're pretty strong and they really help Subterranean Assault do what it needs to. We've got the Neurotyrant and the Zoanthrope Brick. It's a very good unit. Hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, and then the stratagem to allow for sustained hits and ignore cover really bump the Zoanthrope's damage to 11. It's very, very strong. We've added an additional Lictor just to screen out the midboard and make sure that people can't infiltrate too easily into our front lines. We do want to create some space in the early games to allow for us to put our tunnels down and to activate wherever we want to. And then we've added a Haruspex just to have another unit to jump out of a tunnel and to get people. So the full 2,000 point list that I'm including here is a Trigon Prime, a Swarmlord, a Neurotyrant, Hormagaunts, Gargoyles, a Biovore, 2 Haruspexes, 2 Lictors, a Maleceptor, a Psychophage, 2 Raveners, a Tyrannifex, and Zoanthropes. It's a lot of really good units, all packed together in 2,000 points. Even though that Subterranean Assault has been out for a while, I don't think it is quote unquote solved. I don't think there is one list out there that is objectively the best list. So when I'm going through these lists, understand that this is kind of what I would do if I was starting at a smaller collection and I wanted to build bit by bit and add to this. Now, I think the 2,000 point list that I just talked about is a pretty competitive list and it is pretty strong. However, that doesn't mean that that is the only Subterranean Assault list that you should be running. I think a lot of Subterranean Assault is kind of like a choose your own adventure game. The thing is, you're going to get units on the battlefield where they normally should not be. And I think your goal in your list construction is trying to figure out the units that do the best by being 6 inches away and charging or getting strange angles that they normally wouldn't, like Haruspexes and Tyrannifexes. Whatever units you think are going to function best in your meta and follow that detachment rule are probably the units that are going to work the best for you. For instance, one of my favorite units for Subterranean Assault, and I did not include it in this video just because the points were a little bit clunky, is the Norn. I love including a Norn Emissary in my Subterranean Assault list because it's really good. You can just put him on an objective, score some primary, and your opponent is probably going to ignore it. And then in the later game, if you want your Norn to come in and activate and just kill a bunch of stuff, teleport it. It'll get a 6-inch charge. It'll be able to shoot all at once, and it's going to get a whole bunch of hits through that reroll 1s to hit. It's a very, very good unit in Subterranean Assault. Another thing that I want to mention is in that list, I did not have any Hive Guard. I think Hive Guard might still be a good addition to Subterranean Assault, although the meta it's still shaken up. I think Imperial Knights and Chaos Knights have taken a hit, of course. However, if they're still really good in the meta, then maybe Hive Guard are something that you want to include in your list. However, if they're not, if you're not seeing too many vehicles anymore, then Hive Guard are definitely going to go back to guarding their shelves, as I've said before. So it is all about the meta and what you are going up to face against, and that is why I didn't include them in this video. I think the Zoanthropes and the Tyrannifexes are going to be able to function essentially similarly, if not better than the Hive Guard in a lot of scenarios. I think Zoanthrope's probably a little bit better because of their versatility. However, if your meta is full of a bunch of Imperial Knights and Chaos Knights and a bunch of big spooky robots, yeah, I'd throw some Hive Guard in there for sure. But again, what is more important than anything I've said, what have you been working on? What have you been using in your Subterranean Assault list that you're excited about, that you think the rest of the community should hear? Post it in the comments below, and I'd love to start a discussion. All right, everybody, that is it for today's video, going from 500 points to 2,000 points in Subterranean Assault. If you like this style of video and you'd like to see more, put in the comments below what detachment you want me to take a look at next. I'd be excited to see what our incredible growing community here is excited about. Thank you again for watching, listening, and supporting, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.